What if the city that the rest of America spent 50 years writing off, the city of smokestacks and shuttered factories and hard luck headlines, was secretly one of the most inventive food towns this country has ever produced? What if the pizza you argue about, the ginger ale that burns going down, the hot dog you think belongs to New York, and the potato chip at the bottom of your lunch bag all trace back to the exact same stretch of the American Midwest? And what if Detroit, Motor City, the arsenal of democracy, the place that put the whole world on wheels, didn't just build America's cars, it quietly built a big chunk of America's dinner table, and almost nobody ever bothered to say thank you. Hi, my name is David, and this is Food Origins, the show where we pull back the curtain on the foods you grew up eating and find out they came from somewhere you never expected. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe, because today we are going all in on Detroit. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you are never going to look at a square slice of pizza the same way again. Here is what most people get wrong about Detroit. They picture the assembly line, the Rust Belt, the ruined photographs that every lazy documentary loves to open with. And yes, all of that is part of the story. But Detroit in its prime was something else entirely. It was a magnet. In the first half of the 20th century, this was one of the fastest growing cities on the planet, and people poured in from everywhere. Sicilian and Greek and Macedonian immigrants, Polish families in Hamtramck, Lebanese families in Dearborn, black families arriving from the American South during the Great Migration, all chasing the same promise: a good wage on the line at Ford or Chrysler or General Motors. And when you cram that many hungry, homesick, resourceful people into one industrial city and hand them a factory paycheck and a night shift, something happens. They cook. They improvise. They take whatever is cheap and lying around and turn it into something the whole country eventually wants a bite of. That is the real Detroit food story. So let's get into it. 11 foods, one city, and a history that has been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Food number 1, Detroit-style pizza. Let's start with the one that started a war, because there is no gentler way to put it. Somewhere in America right now, two grown adults are arguing about whether real pizza is thin and foldable or thick and square, and one of them does not even realize that the square they are defending was born in a bar in Detroit out of a literal automotive parts tray. The year was 1946. A place called Buddy's Rendezvous, a blue-collar tavern on the east side of Detroit, on the corner of 6 Mile and Conant. The man usually credited is Gus Guerra, and the recipe supposedly came from his wife Anna's Sicilian family, a thick, focaccia-style street pizza called sfincione. But here's the part that makes it pure Detroit. Gus needed pans. Deep, rectangular, sturdy pans. And what was lying around in a 1940s Detroit, absolutely drowning in automotive manufacturing? Blue steel utility trays. The exact kind of heavy industrial pans used on the factory floor to hold small parts and catch drips under the machines. He baked his pizza in car parts trays. Read that again. The single most important structural decision in the history of an entire pizza style was made because the Motor City happened to have a surplus of factory hardware. And those pans changed everything. Because they were deep and seasoned like a cast iron skillet, and because the cheese, Wisconsin brick cheese, not mozzarella, got pushed all the way out to the metal edges, something magical happened in the oven. The cheese against that hot steel wall caramelized, fried, and crisped into a lacy, dark, crunchy border of burnt cheese that people now drive across state lines to eat. It has a name. They call it Frico. The corners are the most fought-over real estate in the pizza world. And then, in a final act of beautiful backwards logic, the sauce goes on top of the cheese, ladled over in 2 or 3 thick red stripes after the pie is built, which locals will tell you look like racing stripes, because of course they do. For decades, this was a Detroit secret, a neighborhood thing, a square in a bar. Then, sometime in the last 15 years, the food world lost its mind. Detroit-style pizza exploded from Las Vegas to New York to Australia, and every crispy, caramelized corner you have ever fought your sibling for traces back to a tavern on 6 Mile and a stack of car parts trays. Detroit didn't just build the cars, it baked pizza in them. Food number 2, the Detroit Coney dog. Now here is a food with a name so misleading it should almost be illegal. Because there is a hot dog, beloved by millions and argued over by millions more, that carries the name Coney Island, a place in Brooklyn, New York, over 600 miles away. And yet the thing itself, the specific glorious mess we are talking about, is Detroit through and through. Picture it, a natural casing all-beef hot dog with a snap, tucked into a steamed bun, and then buried under a thin, beanless, finely ground beef chili. The locals just call it the sauce. A generous line of bright yellow mustard, and a pile of diced raw white onion. That is a Detroit Coney. No beans. Ever. Do not bring beans into this conversation. The story starts around 1917, with Greek and Macedonian immigrants who came through Ellis Island, many of whom passed by the actual Coney Island in New York, saw the hot dog stands, and carried the idea westward to the booming factory town where the jobs were. And here is the detail that Detroit will never let you forget. In downtown Detroit, on Lafayette Boulevard, there are 2 Coney restaurants, right next door to each other, sharing a wall. American Coney Island and Lafayette Coney Island. American was founded by a Greek immigrant named Gus Guerra. Lafayette was founded, according to the most repeated version of the story, by his own brother. 2 brothers, 2 counters, 1 wall between them, and a rivalry so intense and so beloved that people in Detroit will tell you which one they are loyal to, the way other people tell you their religion. Tourists do side-by-side taste tests. Local news runs the debate every few years. Nobody has ever won, and nobody ever will. The Coney dog fed the factory shifts. It was cheap, it was fast, it was hot, and you could eat it standing up at 2 in the morning coming off the line. It spread across Michigan until there are now hundreds of Coney Islands across the state. Each one convinced its sauce is the real one. A New York place name, a Greek immigrant's idea, and a Detroit soul. That is a Coney dog. Food number 3, Vernors ginger ale. If you did not grow up in Michigan, there is a very good chance you have never had a Vernors, and I am genuinely sorry, because you have been missing one of the great, strange delights of American soda. A ginger ale so aggressively gingery that first-timers cough, their eyes water, and something in their nose lights up like a struck match. Detroiters describe the feeling with real affection. They say it bites. Vernors is not just old. Vernors is ancient by soft drink standards. It was created by a Detroit pharmacist named James Vernor, and the most beloved version of the origin story goes like this. Sometime around 1862, Vernor was experimenting behind his pharmacy counter with a syrup of ginger, vanilla, and a blend of spices, storing it in an oak barrel. Then, the Civil War called, and he went off to serve, leaving the barrel behind. 4 years later, he came home, opened that same oak barrel, and found that the aging had transformed the syrup into something mellow, complex, and unlike anything else. Barrel-aged before barrel-aged anything was cool. Whether every detail of that story is literally true, historians gently argue about. But Vernor believed it, sold it, and built an empire on it. He opened his soda fountain in Detroit in 1866, and that date matters, because it makes Vernors, by most reckonings, the oldest surviving ginger ale in the United States. Older than Canada Dry, older than the coast-to-coast brands you would assume came first. For generations, there was a Vernors gnome on the label, and a downtown Detroit plant where kids pressed their faces to the glass to watch it bottled. Detroiters drink it when they are sick. They drink it warm. They pour it over ice cream, which brings us, conveniently, to our next food. But remember this one, because a barrel of ginger left behind by a man who went to war became the oldest ginger ale in the country. Detroit was aging soda in oak while the rest of America was still figuring out carbonation. Food number 4, Faygo. Stay in the soda aisle because Detroit was not done. In 1907, 2 brothers named Ben and Perry Feigenson, Russian immigrants who had trained as bakers, opened a small bottling operation in Detroit. And this is my favorite detail in the entire Faygo story. They did not have a background in soft drinks. They had a background in frosting. So when it came time to invent flavors, they took the recipes they already knew, cake frosting recipes, and turned them into soda pop. That is why the original Faygo lineup tastes the way it does. Fruit punch, grape, and the one that inspires genuine devotion, a strawberry soda called Red Pop. There is a reason a Faygo tastes like a birthday party in a bottle. It was literally engineered from cake. The name Faygo is just Fagenson, shortened and Americanized for the label. The brothers reportedly worried nobody could pronounce or spell Fagenson, so they trimmed it down. And then there is Rockin' Rye, a creamy vanilla cherry flavor that has no real equivalent anywhere else, and that Detroiters will fight to defend. For most of its life, Faygo was fiercely, stubbornly regional. You simply could not buy it outside the Great Lakes, and Michiganders treated that as a point of pride. Then something strange and wonderful happened. A Detroit hip-hop group turned Faygo into a ritual, spraying it over concert crowds by the case, and suddenly, this humble local pop had a national cult following that had nothing to do with the flavor and everything to do with belonging. A soda invented by two immigrant bakers who only knew how to make frosting became a symbol of the city itself. Only in Detroit. Food number 5, the Boston Cooler. And this is the one where I get to catch you in a lie you did not even know you were telling. Because if I say Boston Cooler, your brain says Boston, Massachusetts, a New England thing, a Fenway Park, Paul Revere, chowder and baked beans thing. And your brain is completely, hilariously wrong. The Boston Cooler has nothing to do with Boston, Massachusetts. It has never had anything to do with Boston, Massachusetts. The Boston Cooler is a Detroit invention, and the most widely accepted explanation is that it was named after Boston Boulevard, a street on Detroit's west side, near a soda fountain where it was supposedly first served and popularized. The city named a drink after one of its own streets. The rest of the country assumed it meant the famous Boston, and a simple geographic misunderstanding has been quietly living on menus ever since. So what is it? It is beautiful in its simplicity. It is Vernors, that same fiery, barrel-aged ginger ale we just talked about, blended with vanilla ice cream until it becomes a thick, creamy, spicy sweet float, somewhere between a milkshake and a soda. The sharpness of the ginger cuts the richness of the cream. The cream tames the burn of the ginger, and the two things together are so obviously perfect that you wonder why the whole world is not drinking them. A Detroit drink, named after a Detroit street, made from a Detroit ginger ale that half the country credits to a city on the other side of the map. That is the kind of quiet theft Detroit has been putting up with for 100 years. Food number 6, better made potato chips. Some foods on this list conquered the world. This one did something almost harder. It survived. In the 1920s and 30s, Detroit was absolutely swimming in potato chip companies. When chips were still fried in small batches and delivered fresh and local, a growing industrial city could support dozens of little chip makers, and Detroit had, by some counts, more than 30 of them at once, all fighting for the same lunch pails and corner stores. Better Made was founded in 1930 by two men, Cross Mosseri and Peter Cusenza, Sicilian immigrants, the exact kind of resourceful newcomers this whole video keeps circling back to, right at the start of the Great Depression. Think about that timing. Starting a snack food company the same year the economy fell off a cliff. And yet, out of that ferociously crowded field, through the Depression, through the war, through the collapse of the local grocery, and the rise of the national brands that swallowed up almost every regional chip maker in America, Better Made just refused to die. It is still there. Still frying chips in Detroit, on Gratiot Avenue. Still family connected. Still fiercely local. One of the last great independent potato chip companies in the country, in a city that once had dozens. In an industry built on scale and shelf space and out-of-state conglomerates, Better Made is a Detroit chip that simply would not quit. Sometimes, the food history that matters most is not the one that took over the planet. It is the one that stubbornly stayed home and survived. Food number 7, Sanders Hot Fudge, and possibly the ice cream soda itself. In 1875, a German immigrant named Fred Sanders opened a confectionery on Woodward Avenue in downtown Detroit. And Sanders would go on to become such a fixture of Detroit life that for 100 years, saying you would meet at Sanders meant something specific to every kid in the city. But it is what came out of that kitchen that earns it a place here. Sanders is where one of the great American soda fountain legends supposedly begins. The story goes that Fred Sanders ran out of the sweet cream he used to make ice cream sodas, and rather than turn customers away, he improvised, dropping scoops of ice cream directly into carbonated soda water. The result, the tale says, was the ice cream soda, born out of a shortage on a hot Detroit day. Now, I have to be honest with you, because intellectual honesty matters on this channel. There are competing claims to the ice cream soda from other cities, and food historians will happily argue this one until the ice melts. But Detroit's claim is old, it is documented, and it is beloved. What is not up for debate is the hot fudge. Sanders' hot fudge topping, thick, dark, buttery, made to seize slightly against cold ice cream, became legendary, and jars of it are still sold today to people who grew up on it. And then there is the bumpy cake, that devil's food cake topped with rows and rows of buttercream ridges, a Detroit birthday table icon that exists almost nowhere else in the country. A German immigrant with a candy counter gave a whole city its sweet tooth, and quite possibly gave America the ice cream soda in the bargain. Food number 8, ballpark franks. Here is one you have almost certainly eaten at a summer barbecue without a single clue that it was engineered in Detroit for a very specific job. The year was 1957. A Detroit company, High Grade Food Products, won the contract to supply the hot dogs at Briggs Stadium, the home of the Detroit Tigers, the ballpark that would later be known as Tiger Stadium. And they did not want to just sell a generic hot dog. They wanted a hot dog built for the ballpark experience. So they created a frank designed to swell dramatically when it hit the heat of a grill or a steamer. Plumper, juicier, bigger on the bun than the competition. And they gave it a slogan that is now permanently lodged in the American brain, whether you realize it or not. They plump when you cook 'em. That line, that specific promise about a hot dog visibly getting fatter as it cooks, sold ballpark franks out of a Detroit stadium and into supermarket freezers from coast to coast. Think about the next backyard cookout you go to, the next 4th of July, the next Little League game, the next lazy summer Sunday with a grill going. There is an excellent chance the hot dog on your plate is a direct descendant of a frankfurter invented to feed Detroit Tigers fans in the summer of 1957. Detroit didn't just give baseball a hot dog. It gave the entire country the hot dog it pictures when it pictures a hot dog. Food number 9, roasted pistachios. And I mean the entire American idea of a roasted, salted pistachio. You crack open by the handful. Because that traces back, remarkably, to one Detroit company. In 1924, an immigrant family founded a company called Germac in Detroit, in the historic Eastern Market District. And Germac is widely recognized as the first company in the United States to commercially roast and sell pistachios. Stop and think about how strange and specific that is. The pistachio itself is ancient. It comes from the Middle East and has been eaten for thousands of years. But the American ritual, the bar snack, the road trip bag, the little green nut you split open with your thumbnail and eat until your fingertips ache. The business of roasting and salting and selling those at scale to Americans started in Detroit. Before Germac, pistachios in America were an obscure imported curiosity. After Germac, they became a snack. The company is still operating in Eastern Market today, roasting nuts a short walk from where it started a century ago. It is one of those origin stories that reframes something you never once questioned. Every time you have absent-mindedly worked your way through a bag of pistachios and left a little pile of shells behind, you were taking part in a habit that a Detroit family taught the country. The city that put America on wheels also taught America how to snack on a pistachio. Food number 10, the Maurice salad. This one comes with a ghost because the place that made it famous no longer exists. And if you are from Detroit and over a certain age, just the name might put a lump in your throat. For most of the 20th century, the beating heart of downtown Detroit retail was J.L. Hudson's, a department store so enormous, so grand, so central to the city's identity that it was practically a cathedral of shopping. And inside Hudson's, up in the restaurants where shoppers stopped for lunch, they served the Maurice salad. The Maurice is a specific thing. Julienned strips of ham, turkey, and Swiss cheese laid over crisp iceberg lettuce with sweet gherkin pickle and bound together by a tangy, creamy mustard and mayonnaise dressing that people spent decades trying to reverse engineer at home. It was named, as the story goes, after a maitre d' at the store, and to generations of Detroiters, it was not just a salad, it was the taste of a day downtown. The taste of getting dressed up, riding into the city, and eating lunch in the most important building in town. Hudson's closed. The building was famously demolished, but the Maurice salad survived, kept alive on menus around the region and in the memories of everyone who ate one under those high store ceilings. A department store salad became a piece of civic memory. That is a very Detroit kind of immortality. The building comes down, but the recipe refuses to leave. Food number 11, almond boneless chicken. And I saved this one for last because it is the one that surprises people the most, even people who grew up eating it and never once realized it was a local invention. If you walk into a Chinese-American restaurant almost anywhere else in the country and ask for almond boneless chicken, you will very often get a blank look. Because this dish, known in Detroit by the name Warsu Gai, is a Detroit Chinese-American specialty that barely exists outside of Michigan. Here is what shows up at the table. A boneless chicken breast, battered and deep fried until it is shatteringly crisp, sliced into strips, laid across a bed of shredded iceberg lettuce, blanketed in a rich brown gravy, and scattered with toasted, slivered almonds. It is crunchy and soft and savory and comforting all at once, and to a Detroiter, it is as normal as fried rice. Take it 2 states away and it is a total mystery. It is the product of exactly the same forces that made everything else on this list. An immigrant community. In this case, Chinese restaurateurs who put down roots in Detroit, taking a familiar technique and adapting it to local tastes until they had built something that belonged entirely to one city. You will not find Warsu Gai on a national menu. You will not see it in a food documentary. But drive around Metro Detroit and it is on nearly every Chinese-American menu. Quietly beloved, completely local. It is Detroit food history on a single plate. It came from somewhere else. It became something new here, and it never left. 11 foods, 1 city, and a story that most people have been driving straight past for their entire lives. Detroit gave us a pizza baked in automotive parts trays and a hot dog wearing another city's name. It gave us the oldest ginger ale in America, aged in an oak barrel by a man who left for a war. It gave us a soda invented from frosting recipes, a drink named after a street that fooled the whole country, a potato chip that simply refused to die, a candy counter that may have handed us the ice cream soda, a ballpark frank that plumps when you cook it, the American pistachio habit, a department store salad that outlived the building it was born in, and a fried chicken dish that never crossed the state line. Detroit is not just the Motor City. It is not just smokestacks and hard luck headlines and photographs of empty buildings. It was always something richer than that. A city of immigrants and auto workers and improvisers who took whatever was cheap and lying around, whether that was a car parts pan or a frosting recipe or a barrel of ginger, and turned it into something the whole country eventually wanted a taste of, usually without ever knowing where it came from. Now you know. I'm David, and this is Food Origins. If this changed the way you think about Detroit, or the way you think about that square slice of pizza you had last week, hit that like button and subscribe, because we have got stories exactly like this one lined up for cities and cuisines that are going to completely rearrange the way you see your plate. And tell me in the comments, which one of these 11 surprised you the most? Was it the Boston cooler, the pizza pans, the pistachios? I have a feeling it is going to be different for everyone.